I remember growing up and there was this red hot stove when I was younger at home. And I remember always looking at it when I was a child, an infant really, and always wanting to crawl towards it or walk towards it. And every time I would attempt to touch it, my parents would either shout or hit to say, hata, it's hot. And every time they said that, it just drew me closer and closer to the stove because I'm just like, what do you mean? So pretty. The red light is calling me. Anyways, I think they got tired of trying to teach me that, you don't go there. So they let me experience it for myself. They kept quiet. I walked towards the stove, touched the stove, burnt the living life out of myself. And needless to say, I have never gone back to the stove again. And now I know that when you touch a red hot stove, it will burn you. I want you to take that example and flip it around. Imagine that you are the red hot stove and that your parents are part of you. And then imagine that Namkla is the person to which you're trying to communicate your boundaries to. Every single time you tell this person that, I don't like it when you do this. I don't like it when you do this. You get to a point where you keep quiet and you let them go and disrespect the boundary, and you teach them consequences to doing just that. With that intro, guys, welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of respecting your own boundaries and how that's very much interlinked with your values and morals and principles as a person. Establishing those is critical to you really knowing how to respect your boundaries. People are innate to testing a boundary. It's human nature to try and do so. But you get people that overdo it. Like if I'm constantly communicating that I don't like something, and you're constantly testing it, then you're trying me. Then you are wanting the wrath. Unfortunately, there are people that are like that. And hence the importance of you standing on business and being able to communicate consequence to disrespectful behavior when it comes to things that you don't like. But let's go back. How do you get to that point? Because it's not easy. It's not easy to teach consequence to someone that you've invited into your space, someone that I'm assuming you've trusted, be it a friend, be it a colleague, be it a relationship, a romantic relationship that you're in, be it a family member. Obviously, there's levels to the consequences or even levels to the communication. But however, the ultimate decision maker as to whether or not somebody's disrespected your boundary is how it makes you feel. Most of the time, people allow people to disrespect their boundaries. And I say allow very intentionally because you have a choice. You always do. But you've got to take it back to who you are, back to self. If, for example, I don't like it when someone is late, you find that disrespectful because it's disrespectful towards your time and you value your time, right? Why is that? Why do you place so much value in your time? How did that start? So often, I think people set boundaries and they don't align them to their values. You set a boundary and it's got nothing to do with who you are. Hence, it is so easy for someone to disrespect it because you don't place a value on it yourself. If you are somebody who is a respecter of time and you've done the work to find out why that is for you, and it's usually linked to your childhood, hey? It's usually linked to your upbringing. There was something that happened in your upbringing that made you feel a certain way or uncomfortable. And it had to do with time. Either somebody was late to something or consistently doing something and you didn't like it. And with time, in your subconscious, you accumulated all of these behaviors and traits that you constantly receive from certain people. And you were just like, I don't like this. And that's why I've set a boundary that time for me is if you waste my time, you're a disrespectful person. And that's fine. But a lot of us set boundaries which are not necessarily unrealistic, but here's where you disrespect them. You disrespect them when you allow somebody to constantly do something that you don't like. It's very telling of how much value you place in yourself. And people will always take advantage of what is given to them. It's human nature for someone. If I give you a hand and yet I allow you to go past that hand right through to the arm, you're going to take the whole arm because I'm allowing you to do that. And it's not enough to just communicate it. You've got to action it. Consequence. So often people set boundaries and they're like, yeah, I don't like this. And when somebody does exactly what you don't like, you don't action your disapproval of them disrespecting that boundary. Hence, they think that they can do it again 10 times worse. And the more you let them do it, the more they continue to not take you seriously. And often, the people that disrespect your boundaries don't mess when it comes to their boundaries being respected. Oh, no, no, no. And they will often ask the most ridiculous of requests from you, knowing full well that they would never do those things. But because they've seen how you constantly disrespect your boundaries, they know you're going to do it. Boundaries are all about how much value you place on yourself. We often use the word self-love loosely, not understanding how important it is, not just when making decisions and choices, but also when setting a firm foundation when it comes to how people interact with us. Once you've discovered the importance of loving self, once you've had the uncomfortable conversations with yourself, nobody can do or tell you something about yourself that you don't know. That's one. And nobody can do something negative to you and you just sit there and you take it. Why? Because you've done the work, the deep diving work. You've had the uncomfortable conversations with yourself. You've been alone with yourself long enough and you've been okay with not having company so that you can deal and work on yourself. You go on these solo dates, you spend a lot more time with yourself than you do with other people because you understand the importance of knowing yourself so that you can identify which people are for you and which are not, which company best reflects you or brings out the best in you and which doesn't, which relationship, which companion would best suit your requirements and you as a person based on your knowledge of yourself, what makes you tick, what doesn't, what makes you happy, what doesn't. How do you enable somebody to show up in the best version of themselves because you've done the work and you've enabled that space of vulnerability amongst the other person, be it a friendship, be it a romantic relationship, where they can show up in their most authentic selves. So often we downplay the importance of having time for yourself and really romanticizing yourself. We often place our value in other people because we have such a low self esteem, we have such a low self worth. We view ourselves in such a belittling manner that we don't feel that we are worthy of being loved. Honestly, when you look at what somebody says and how they act, that somebody can say, oh my gosh, I love myself, and yet tolerate the most intolerable behavior. And then you're just like, are you sure? Yeah, are you sure? It's giving, you don't. You know? Hence, people aren't stupid. When you say one thing and you do the complete opposite, don't think people are stupid. And the people that allow you to do that are the ones that take advantage. The people that don't tell you that you're messing up here, you're disrespectful here, I don't like it, are the ones that will be constantly using you. They don't want you to go. They don't want you to succeed. Don't want you to be the best version of yourself because it doesn't suit them. The people who often have let other people disrespect their own boundaries. Much like myself, that's how I was, have a very high people pleasing mentality. And people pleasing, although the intentions are good, is not good for you. It's really not good for you because people pleasers often please other people with the same kind of unrealistic expectations that people think like how they do. And even though you're doing it out of a good heart, there's always something that you're expecting the other person to show up just like you would. And that's not real. Nor is it fair, is it? Because people show up for who they want to show up for. And when they do show up for you, they will show up in the best version that represents themselves and not how you would do things. People pleasing is very much linked to your upbringing. Something about you feels inadequate, feels discontent with self, and doesn't like something about themselves. And usually, people pleasers have had a childhood trauma, be it they didn't get enough affirmation from their parents. Usually, people pleasers are people that never heard I love yous from their parents, were never hugged by their parents, were never affirmed of how proud their parents were of them. They were never affirmed of how beautiful they were. They were never told by their parents that they were beautiful. So they don't believe it. People pleasing comes from you not believing that you are good enough, you are worth being loved, being respected, being appreciated, being honored, being provided for, because you never got any of that as a child. And as a result, you tend to seek it from other people. You seek validation from other people in a way to kind of fill that void. There is no ways you can set boundaries if you are still trying to please other people, because you can never have a boundary that's respectful to yourself or loving to yourself or protective of yourself if at the same time you still want to make sure that X is happy, Y is happy, and Z is happy. You can't please everybody. Someone, X, Y, or Z, is going to come and disrespect that boundary because it doesn't suit their narrative. And because you have this people pleasing mentality, you're going to start weakening on those boundaries. You're going to start sagging here. You're going to start accepting what is ordinarily unacceptable behavior, and they're going to keep doing it. The more you accept it, they're going to keep disrespecting it. Nobody should be able to treat you in a way that you don't allow. You have full control of who you have access to and who you don't. And the moment you start loving yourself and valuing the importance of self and understanding that it's a privilege to spend time with me, you're blessed if you're able to share experiences with me because they're always genuine and empathetic and real. And they don't just have good intentions, but they're actioned out. If I love you, I mean it. Whether you're a friend, whether you're family, whether you're a co-worker, whether we're in a romantic relationship. If I say I love you, I'll show you. And I mean it. However, not everyone deserves access to that love. And that's what people pleasers don't understand, because they don't believe that the love that they have to give is, one, good enough. They don't believe that they are worthy of being loved, two. And number three, they never were loved by the people that they wanted to hear and receive love from the most. That's usually their parents. Unfortunately, we can't go back and undo our childhood. But it's so important that we deal with the consequences of the scars created by our childhood to be able to dictate the now and, God willing, the future. There's nothing you can do about it. It's in the past. It happened. Your parents didn't show up for you in the way that they should have. They didn't validate you the way that they should have. They didn't love you the way that they should have. They abandoned you. It is what it is. And I'm not saying that to be harsh. No, no, no. But some people need to hear the truth. I was one of those people. And it's also okay to accept that people love you the way that they know how. And only you can change the narrative. If you believe that there's something wrong with not being validated, with not being loved, and those are your boundaries, those are traits that make up your value system. And in line with that, that's how you set a boundary. But if you don't go back and do the work, you can't set that boundary. So here's how I started doing the work, because this exercise or this journey started 3 years ago. And what life or God rather will do to you if you don't deal with your past and the traumas of your past, they will constantly creep up. And each time they creep up, they are worse than the previous time, to a point where you will be an island. You will break. You'll be an emotional wreck. You'll sink into depression. You'll have anxiety, constantly hyperventilating over life, constant fear over other people, constant need for control, constant desire for validation. You will live a miserable life. That used to be me. I, 4 years ago, was so sad and borderline very depressed 3 years ago, actually. And what I did was, first of all, I started to watch some YouTube videos to try and identify a community of people that could diagnose what it is that I'm feeling, the void, the emptiness, and the reasons why certain things are happening to me, and the reasons why I'm attracting certain behaviors and certain traits. And a lot of those from the research that I did boil down to childhood, right? And the antidote was therapy. Now, if you are fortunate enough to be able to go and see a therapist, I would highly recommend that you do. Your childhood can make or break you. It's important that you don't repeat the same mistakes that were done unto you by your parents, knowingly or unknowingly. If you want to show up for your children so that they show up for their children in the best possible way, and they are supported and nourished and validated, you've got to go back and undo what was done unto you. Go to therapy. After going to therapy, and I was very patient with the process. Initially, I wasn't, because I thought, okay, why don't you just give me a framework that I can apply whenever I'm triggered, whenever I'm feeling a certain way. And this therapist kept wanting to go back to my childhood. I'm like, whoa, ma'am, can we not go and talk about that? Like, and she could tell, like, I'm busy trying to solve for the present and most importantly the future. But she's just kept wanting to go back to my childhood, and that made me so uncomfortable for a very long time. I think for the first 6 months, I was just like, oh. But after close to a year, I started to get it. Much of my childhood dictated how I showed up in the present. And oftentimes you let things build up. You let things build up. And obviously your boundaries evolve, guys, over time as you evolve. But if you don't evolve positively towards yourself, your boundaries will you'll set a boundary, collapse, disrespected by yourself. You set another one, collapse, disrespect by yourself. At the end of it, you'll end up feeling as though you are not appreciated by the world. That's because you are not validating yourself. You're seeking validation from the world, and the world owes you nothing. 3.5 years later, I'm so glad to report that I'm in a much, much, much better state. I mean, I've made some hard decisions, letting go of some difficult relationships, some very long friendships, and just decluttering my life from people who don't add value to my life. People give me stress. And if ever I invite those people back, it's on my terms, unapologetically, and it's within a distance. Because my need to protect my peace, my mental health, my vibe, like just my alignment with God and my relationship with God is so much more important than any human being. And unless you're pouring into my cup as much as I'm pouring back into yours, you will go now. And no, you will have left yesterday. I'm at that point right now. It's a constant evolution. It's a constant growth. There's a need to constantly work on yourself until the day you die. Until God decides it's time to take you, my child, you've done your part, goodbye. Unless you have that mindset and you're constantly seeking ways in which you can improve on self and show up to yourself, for yourself, in the best version of yourself, you will always be intimidated by other people. You will always need to be validated by other people, and you always allow people to disrespect your boundaries, and as a result, disrespect yourself. Anyways, ladies and gents, that brings us to the end of this video. I truly hope that the message that I've tried to send out in this video in terms of respecting yourself has come to the fore, and quite strongly, because it's something I'm really passionate about, and it's something that I've seen if you do this well and you start really loving yourself well and doing things and prioritizing things that are fitting for you unapologetically and selfishly so, you will show up in the best version of yourself, and in so doing, inevitably, the universe responds. Just have a little grace on yourself and work. It's always a work in progress. And if this video resonated with you in any way or form, please feel free to share your stories down below, comment, and tell me. Let's engage. Tell me how you feel about it. Tell me if you went through a similar period where you let people disrespect your boundaries and how you overcame it. Tell me if you're still going through it, and we can talk to one another. This is why we have this channel. Thank you, as usual, for so much love that you've shown into my channel. We are growing. We are well on our way to 500 followers. I love you guys so much. Until next time. Bye-bye.